It's the beginning. Welcome to the episode one of the Outspoken podcast. All right. So, how do we start this off?
This is called the Outspoken 101 podcast. And the reason for that is Outspoken podcast was taken. It was also a debate podcast, I think.
We'll live with that.
Yeah. This episode was supposed to be titled Becoming Outspoken. So I guess I'll be the interviewer for now because you are the founder of this company. So can you tell me what inspired you to start this company?
One of the main reasons why I wanted to start like an Outspoken Philippines is it has to do a lot with people not having as much access to debate education, and it's because of the lack of privilege or the privilege asymmetry. And one of my major goals for Outspoken is for it to be a for-profit company that expresses its care and heart for the community, and eventually having an Outspoken Philippines where there are a bunch of students talking about their advocacies and empowering others and inspiring growth.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why I wanted to be a part of Outspoken as well is, as you know, we hosted a podcast before, the Debatable podcast, and it really was supposed to be you know, giving students without coaches the ability to train on their own, have a coach if they don't have one yet. And I feel like it matches our company's mission, which is let's provide access to everyone.
Yeah, I actually want to point out that's the podcast that I really want to acknowledge you and Nina for, because during a time where Nina and I competed at a tournament and our kalabans were students outside Metro Manila who listened to the debatable podcast, and they were saying that, wow, this is Nina from Nina and Kyle. In my eyes, like Nina was the coolest person. Like Nina is an icon and a hero to them. And I think that we really do embody the same values and the same vibe of it's really debate has to go beyond us. And it's really about how could we be of service to others and what are the pathways to do that. Having you here is an awesome opportunity for that because now we can combine our strengths and create more initiatives.
What we can talk about is how can debate be used in order to spread or forward your own personal advocacy. Do you have any advice for these people?
That's awesome. I think one of the main things that are underestimated with debate education is an individual's capacity to take on different perspectives such that you can grow exponentially. So, for example, in running a business like Outspoken, I really find it useful to work with debaters such that I could also see different perspectives where we could take action with more heart. And I think when people are exposed to different perspectives, that's where people could really grow and find better solutions, like how we talk about, like how we price our services, how we try to create initiatives to serve others. It's because of our debates of like how people can access this that we come up with new initiatives and new solutions that accommodates the strengths of different perspectives. So I think in that first principle, when people really do get that habit of questioning their biases and seeing different perspectives, then there are just more solutions, new policies that they can enact or advocate for. And I think that's one of the core foundations of you being able to make a difference, public speak, try to influence. So yeah, that's my answer to that. But how about you, Kyle? What's your perspective on debate making a real impact in your real life?
First, I'd like to respond a bit to the idea that, well, debate can help you find different perspectives and come to a solution. I think that a lot of debaters, just by the way that they're trained, they make up a policy or they make up a counter policy and then they'll defend it to the death. There are some debaters who just go, yeah, this is the only thing that I want. I'm not willing to make compromises. So I did get into trouble with that before because I made like a policy for an organization and not everyone really agreed with it. So I discussed like the pros and cons and stuff with the dissenters. Is it unfair to call them dissenters? Like people who disagreed with
Yeah.
me. And then I said, all right, how about a compromise? Let's do this. Let's maintain this policy, but let's slow it down or let's add something else to accommodate your concerns. And then some people also didn't like that. Some debaters didn't like that because from their perspective, I was just like, why aren't you fighting for the things that you allegedly believe in? And for me, is as much as I really care about defending my policy, What I really care about is the difference that it makes. So I agree. So I can see from your point of view, and therefore the onus is on me to modify the terms of the policy. If I can't really convince you, then the onus is let's accommodate you instead. I feel like that could be a limitation for debate. Like debate teaches you to listen. It teaches you to seek out valid perspectives, valid concerns. But one of the limitations of debating is that it doesn't necessarily tell you how can you synthesize it in order to make a better solution. So I think that debate is the first step towards that, because you can't synthesize if you can't listen to the antithesis first. So that's for building policies or building like products or whatever. Another thing I'd like to note for businesses in general is, and maybe even sales, is when you're thinking about debating, one of the main things that we teach as debate coaches is try to place yourself in the shoes of a stakeholder. So if you're thinking about, let's make a business, right? One of the biggest tips that you can get from any sales book is try to imagine your target audience, your target market, and put yourself in their shoes. I feel like a lot of the time, a lot of business professionals have this idea of what they are and they impose that this is the reality. Whereas in debating, like you have an incentive to sort of question, is this reality? Is my idea of who the target market is the reality for who they are? Like we make a lot of assumptions about who our target market is. Debate trains you to question, like, are my assumptions correct? And that's very important if you're testing out like new products, right? But for non-business stuff, I think that if you are in a mass organization and you want to organize like a protest, or if you want to organize a movement, you also need to have some sort of debate skill. You might not notice that you're using a debate skill, especially for non-debaters, but you are, because you're developing a strategy to convince other people to do a certain thing or to agree with you. So the same skills apply. Listen to different perspectives. Never assume that there's only one kind of person. So that happens a lot, even with debaters. Like we talk about the feminist movement or the LGBT movement or the Black Lives Matter movement, and assume that they're all composed of the same people with the same beliefs. But that won't make you go far in debating. So if you develop your debating skills, you see the nuances in the different types of people and adjust your approach towards convincing these different groups of people. So if you're going to start like a mass movement or something, the first step is to identify what's the problem that we're trying to solve, and then brainstorm ways on how to solve it. And then how can we adapt our approach to different kinds of audiences? And that's basically what debate is, right? But lastly, I feel like, because I know that a lot of the people who are going to listen to this want to be lawyers. And indeed, like we were just processing the applications for the spring semester. And we asked them, for context to the listeners, like we asked them, what do you want to be? Like, what are your professional or academic goals? And most of them said that they wanted to be lawyers. I have some good news and bad news. The bad news first always. The bad news is, if you're expecting a lot of arguments about like social issues when you become a lawyer, that's not going to happen. What's more likely to happen is you're going to argue about like very fine details. If I do something, does it betray or indicate a malicious intent, for example? Or is this evidence admissible or not? So debate is a little bit limited in that sense when it comes to lawyering. But I don't see lawyers as just like purely let's talk about the details. I see them as like they have to do social work as well, because the limitation of a lawyer is they need to focus on the law and only the law. But sometimes the law is unfair. So it is very important for a lawyer to have an educative function where they are aware of the social realities and they use their pleadings, they use their platform, they use their profession to make a plea to change unfair laws. And that's where debate can really help, because it trains you to not just look at the law, but also what does this imply? How does this affect people on the ground? And by taking that approach, not just looking at what the law says, but thinking about what the law should be, I think that this is the path towards not just being like a good lawyer, but a great lawyer. A great lawyer knows if I can't help you within this law, how can we get the law to change? So I think that we need to understand that we are limited, even in the legal profession. I want to be in the legal profession, but I need to understand our role is limited in social advocacy. And we need to go beyond that if you want to make lasting change for everyone involved as well.
I totally agree, especially when you also talked about the people who want to become leaders of movements or organizations and then people. I think from a perspective of an entrepreneur, pitching a business idea is a prime minister speech. When
Yeah.
we offer a service because there's a particular problem, and the service that we offer or the product that we offer is the solution, is the policy. And
Yeah.
then we provide arguments as to why this particular thing that we're offering as a product or service is something that would help you solve those particular problems. And I think in the advent of technology and artificial intelligence, I think there will be a lot of other students as well that will be entrepreneurs younger, that will be starting younger than us. And one of the things that, like, if they really want to become a good person with pitching a business, then they ought to practice first speaker speeches because that's essentially the habits of people who sell certain product or service. So yeah, I just want to provide that contrast in terms of like social movement advocacy, but if we also want to be like capitalist or in creating like social entrepreneurship initiatives, that's where debate is also useful, insanely useful.
Yeah. I remember like we were developing a pitch for a client, and I've never done one before. So you went up to me and you're like, okay, here's how you can structure it. And then, so I was working on it. I was like, wait a minute, this is like a PM speech? And you're like, yeah, exactly, it's a PM speech. And I was surprised because I have other sources of employment as well. Sometimes I write documents, basically like resolutions. Like, I won't say who it's for, but like, let's say that there's a board of directors or something, not this company. There's a board of directors, and sometimes they have resolutions. And they know that at some point they might have to give a copy of this resolution to the government. So whenever they or will be used in like a legal setting, a court setting. While I was writing that, I realized that it's basically like a PM speech as well. Because at first I was thinking like, how can I write this in such a way that everyone who reads it can understand where the board is coming from.
That's why I gotta contextualize.
Yeah. So I was doing the outline. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I can talk about like the context, like where we're at right now. What's our basis for this? Do we have any data? Do we have any studies? And then at the end, what are we going to do about it? And then lastly, why that would be important. And I was like, yeah, that's a PM speech. And I told my supervisor at this other place of employment, I was like, this feels like I'm writing a debate speech. And then they were like, yeah, exactly. That's why we hired you. So you can apply it in many different contexts, right? Being outspoken, nice. Title drop. Being outspoken isn't just, and debating isn't just like speaking, but like speaking in a way that can convince people. So it's a skill with a lot of variety, which is why I think, and I've always said this, that debate is for everyone because everyone at some point in their lives will have to convince other people and maybe even themselves. So I truly believe that it might not be as glamorous right now, but I want to contribute to the idea that this is something that everyone should at least try out. And like one of the main reasons why we made the podcast was let's try to make it accessible to non-debaters as well. And we did hear a lot of people come up to us saying, you know, the reason why I started debating was because of this podcast. It made it more accessible to me because it gave me like the tips and stuff. And that's also the reason why like I pitched to you like we should make a podcast. Because if you can inspire people to start debating, I feel like we've done so much already. Because debate, okay, personal story, debate has changed my life because growing up I didn't really have the ability to talk about what I felt and what I thought. So when people like disagreed with me or didn't get it, I would get really mad and violently so sometimes. And one day I was supposed to try out for a different varsity. I was supposed to try out for swimming. And then the faculty called me into their conference room, and I was like, "Oh no, am I in trouble again?" And the additional context for that is like, just a few days before that, like I had punched someone as a joke, but when I entered the conference room, it was like a bunch of nerds, a bunch of nerds, and I was like, "Wait a minute, so am I in trouble? Is this like a program that they have where?" Let's pair up the problem kid with the smart kid, and then the good influence rubs off on the bad kid. But no, it was really just about debating. One of the teachers that I had apparently found that Kyle just needs space to express himself. And like I fell in love with it. I fell in love with just having the space where I could be listened to. And I could talk about like a variety of things.
So what's the difference between you as a high school student before debate and like after debate? Like what's the
Night
biggest change?
and day. Night and day, I swear to God. Like, I'm almost unrecognizable from... There are some things that stuck. I still laugh at the same. If you make like a joke, kunyari, duties or something like duties. In 6th grade, I would have laughed at that. Right now, I would still laugh at that. But the way that I approach situations or approach problems changed so much. I chilled out a lot. Because of debate. So if you disagree with me or you don't want to talk to me, I'm like, okay, fine. Whereas before, I'd be like, why not? And then I'd like confront you, I'd follow you. Creepy actually, following someone until they talk to you, and then the only thing that they'll say is go away, and then you won't be able to accept it. But now knowing what I know, I'm just like, yeah, okay, you know what? You need space, that's valid. I feel like the first step towards being a better person is just trying to understand where other people are coming from. So this kind of empathy, like, is the first step towards making a better person. But of course, like, that's only the first part.
Yeah. I just want to talk about that for a second, where the reason why there's a big shift in your way of being when you debate or when an individual debates is because debating trains us to listen, because debate is 90% listening. So the fact that like we can understand where other people are coming from, or if people disagree with us, we're okay with it, we're not offended, is because now we become better listeners, not only because of we listen to rebut, but we also listen to really understand the fullest extent of the other person's logic,
Yeah.
which humanizes like different types of people. But at the same time, the more we listen genuinely and listen to the strength of an argument that we disagree with, that's more where we are likely to be able to respond to it comprehensively, or also even respond to it in a way that it convinces other individuals. Because other people can be convinced once the strength of their argument gets acknowledged. That's where they're willing to change their minds. So I just want to say that, like, for other people who may have that experience of being so legit, being so aggressive, one of the things that really it trains you in is your you being calm and
Yeah.
you having an open mind and an open heart to the person you are listening to, even if you're competing against that person. And that makes you a better individual, but that also makes you an amazing debater. So I think, yeah, like that's why I resonate with that, like being chiller, being kinder, being more understanding. I think that's awesome.
The other thing that I wanted to say was that only comes up to a point, because you can get taken advantage of if you're too empathetic. So truly, like, debate has taught me how the other person probably thinks or probably feels. And I always take it upon myself to accommodate that. But there comes a point where that's too much. So what ended up happening was, I might be oversharing, but like, bad things were happening. Like, I was being subjected to bad things. I was being treated badly. And from my perspective, I was always like, yeah, I'm suffering. But like, thinking about what they're saying, they came from a particular background where they feel like this is the way that they need to cope, etc., etc. And then like, it prolonged the situation beyond what was appropriate. Really, the appropriate one would be like, okay, red flag, let's try to fix it. If it can't be fixed, if it's like a deal breaker, leave. But the problem is, like, you can debate yourself out of thinking that this is a deal breaker all the time. There's a moral debate here where, on one hand, you have utilitarianism, where you always have to listen to what the other person says and try to make them happy. If you use utilitarianism to rule your life, you will sacrifice yourself, which is what happened to me. On the other hand, if you're too deontological, deontology is when like you have principles, you have rules, and then you follow those rules, and that's it, right? You think there are two steps to this, right? The first step is you have a situation and you think of a plan of action. The second part is, can you universalize this action? Can you imagine what if everyone does the same thing that I'm doing? Would that be a better world? And if it is a better world, then you should universalize that. You should never like move away from this rule. But if there are exceptions, then you should find something else. So the problem with the ontology is it's very difficult to think about those universal rules because there are so many different contexts that you can have. So many different things can change. So for example, if a house was burning and there are some people inside it, the ontology would probably tell you like, okay, save them. But maybe that would be counterproductive. Maybe I should just call for a fireman. But then what if you're faced with a situation where the nearest fire station is 10 miles away? 10 kilometers away. They won't be able to get there in time. So like you are debating with yourself, like what is the categorical imperative here? What is the plan of action that you can universalize and would make the world a better place? Meanwhile, the people inside the burning house are like, yo, what's up? What's happening? Help us. And you're like, yeah, I will help you as soon as I figure out what the categorical imperative is. So on one hand, you have utilitarianism, which can lead you vulnerable to abuse is the extreme version. But fixing yourself. So feeling guilty when you're trying to spend time watching a movie, for example, because you could be using this time to help other people, right? This is moral sainthood. But on the other hand, deontology can paralyze you as well. So I guess a middle ground, when utilitarianism, deontology doesn't give me the answer, I think about Aristotle. I think about virtue ethics. And according to Aristotle, it's not so much as what you do, but more of what the kind of person you need or want to be. So you can't be too empathetic, but you can't be totally selfish and unmoving either. So there is like probably a golden mean for every situation, like a balance for each situation. And that's what I strive for. So debate was the reason why I ended up seeing that, okay, my one approach was bad. The other approach, the ontology, which I used before debate, like it's always about me and always about me, because like you can argue I didn't use it properly because if you universalize selfishness, the world wouldn't be nice either. But anyway, like sticking to a particular principle, that's also flawed. So debate is what helped me like truly understand virtue ethics or teleology and lets me apply it to different situations like really fast. And also gives me space to forgive myself when I make mistakes.
You being able to articulate what goes inside your head and what you're feeling. And imagine if like more teenagers are able to do that. Maybe we could see less teenage angst or like self-hatred. Because to add to that, one of the things that like really give me a shot of good like mental well-being is when I'm mean to myself, I have this mental model of asking myself, what if I'm wrong? Right? So like I as a student, I always had bad grades. And in the conservative traditional perspective, bad grades meant that you're gonna be a failure, you're not gonna have income, you're gonna be the palamunin of the house, and all those types of things. But when I had the empowerment to just consider what if the traditional viewpoint is wrong, even if like most of my family members or my community thinks that way. And just seeing the perspective that maybe I'm wrong about my negativity and there's like really light at the end of the tunnel does really do wonders. At the same time, it also keeps me grounded because if I am too ambitious, oh, I'm gonna be a billionaire in my 30s, and what if I'm wrong? What could I do then, therefore, to ground myself and become a bit more practical at the same time being ambitious? So I think it also points to the fact that human beings, in it as we are, we're full of contradictions. Even societies and individuals, we always have to deal with contradictions. And I think one way that it really helps us is who are we and what type of human being are we becoming in spite of that disagreement, in spite of that contradiction. And that's why I just want to segue a bit about racking up points in debate tournaments. What I tell a lot of our students is that it's really not about how many points you rack up or if you're more correct than other people, but it's really about what kind of person are you becoming in the face of disagreement? Are
Yeah.
you becoming a loving person? Are you striving to become understanding? Are you a person that stands up for yourself in times that you are being bullied? And if you have the way to articulate yourself and express yourself, then it's more likely that you can stand up to bullies or even vocalize your concerns, file a complaint, know your rights about those particular areas. And as much as there's no way or pathway or principle to live by, allowing yourself to just really decide for yourself and think independently is also an empowering experience, because what no one can really take away from you is who you are as a human being. And if conversations and activities that make you who am I as a human being, or who are we as humanity, and what is the pathway forward, then it's really an activity in terms of where can we bring the best, where can we bring out the best in us, where can we bring out the best in society and institutions and all those things. That's why, given those struggles and existential crisis, just being able to put words or put a sentence into it, like, gives me a lot of just be alive and do things that empower and inspire me as an individual.
Yeah, I really like that approach when it comes to don't really winning isn't what matters. What matters is are you becoming a better person? I really like that because and I say this to a lot of the students where if you base your happiness or your idea of self-worth on how well you compare to other people, that's a losing battle from the very beginning because you can't control them, right? You are always going to put yourself in a situation where you have no control over your own happiness. If your happiness is based on, am I doing well against my peers? Am I a champion? Am I the best one? It's a losing battle because someone will be better than you, right? You can't be the best forever. And even if you can be the best forever, you will always have this paranoia of, I need to overwork myself or else someone will overtake me. You never give yourself the space to just be content with the things that you have. As opposed to, my father calls this an internal versus external scorecard. An external scorecard is you're seeking validation from external
Like
sources.
medals, trophies.
Exactly. Yeah, so how people see you. But really, that's unsustainable because you'll find yourself like doing more and more damaging things in pursuit of a better perception from others. So, spending a lot of money on like a car that you cannot afford just so that people think that you're cool or people will be impressed by you, right? As opposed to you being a better version of yourself where you can be proud, like I might not have a fancy sports car, but I'm still a good person. And of course, like still listen to what other people have to say. If they have good reason to tell you that you're a bad person, still listen to them. But the motivation should not be I want you to like me. The motivation should be I want to sleep better at night. I want to be able to, do something good or be the kind of person who can do something good. Because if you become that sort of person that can do good, then you will probably be able to do good. So it starts from the inside moving out rather than outside moving in. Yeah, so by the way, like that example of the cool car, there's a paradox that I read about in the psychology of money where it's the cool car paradox where a lot of people buy cool cars because they want other people to think that they're cool. But when other people look at the car, they're like, "Wow, I want to have a car." They never think that, "Wow, you're so cool for having this car." They think it would be cool if I had that car. So the coolness is not about you. The coolness is about the thing. So it's still a losing battle. So yeah.
What do you call this? So, in the context of debate, maybe that would be like the best speaker medal paradox or the trophy paradox, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, for me, ask me who was the champion in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. Like, I really don't know. You probably have an idea, but it's hard to recall, right? But if you were to ask me who were people that were kind enough and made the debate community feel safe and feel like it's an environment for a fun learning experience, I could immediately remember those human beings that provided that experience inside the debate community. So yeah, I really do resonate with that because who's the best speaker of 2014, 2015? I'm not entirely sure, but
2014. Tries to
no,
remember.
exactly, right? But I would know the debaters that are talking about social issues.
Yeah.
I would know the debaters until today that do efforts for social entrepreneurship. I know there's criticism for them, like that it's very neoliberalistic and all that stuff.
It
But at the
is.
same time, it's like what people really do remember are the stances you take and you being able to share your perspective and try to make a difference. And even if you don't know what is the same, like the correct way, is it like a neoliberalist approach or should it be like a NGO and all that stuff? It's really a question of, are you becoming a loving person? Are you becoming a caring person? Now, I just want a quick segue because, like, when we talk about doing good, I really think one of the foundational pieces for one individual to make an impact and do good, is be outspoken for the things that you want to make a difference on. So, since it's outspoken 101, I want to then ask you, from your perspective, what contributes to you becoming outspoken and self-expressed in the areas where you want to make a difference in?
Okay, so one thing that is true for, I feel like it's true for all fields. The first step towards being outspoken is just having the confidence to start speaking. So a lot of people, they don't want to debate because they've never debated, which is really weird because everyone at some point has had their first debate. So if you don't want to debate because you've never debated, then you will never debate. Basically, like it's an Ouroboros, it's a snake eating its own tail. You're never gonna do it. So instead of coming from it from a perspective of I need to be confident first, a better way to go about it is do something, learn how to do it by doing it, and then get confidence that way. So I've done like a lot of very weird jobs, and like I was never confident at first, but I feel like the first step towards being outspoken is to do the thing. Do the thing because that's how you build up confidence, right? You can't. So, for example, I was talking to someone who works in sales, like really good in sales. What they said was if you're training people to do sales, give them gimmies first, like gimmies, like easier tasks because that builds up their confidence. So, that's one. Do the thing. Second is embrace the challenge. There is in a lot of kindergarten schools in I think the UK, they have this sort of diagram like a bullseye thing where there are three zones. There's a comfort zone in the middle, there's challenge zone a little bit beyond that, and the biggest one the farthest area is the panic zone. So you want to strive for the challenge zone where you're going to have a hard time because if you're having a hard time, that's the best way to learn. So when you are making a mistake, there are two kinds of signals. There are two kinds of signals that are sent by your brain. One is error negativity and one is error positivity. Error negative, like both of them signal to you that you need to focus on this experience some more. But whenever you make a mistake, there's something called disequilibrium. Disequilibrium happens when there is a difference between what you know or what you think you know and the reality. And studies have shown that when you enter into a state of disequilibrium, that is the point in time where, because of the error positivity and error negativity responses, that's the time where you're most likely able to learn. So if you reframe or adjust the way that you look at failure and think of them as, well, these aren't really like career ending, right? But they're more of opportunities to grow, opportunities to learn. That's also the time that you can build up confidence, right? So the first one is do the thing to build up confidence. The second one is aim for challenges. And the last thing I want to say with regard to how to be outspoken is trust that you can do it. Trust that you can do it. Because if you do not expect yourself to be able to do it, to be able to learn, you probably will not learn. So there's this thing called the Pygmalion effect, where I think what happened was there's this dude from ancient Greek mythology and then he made like a little doll for himself, and he
Okay.
really loved that doll until it became real. So they applied this to teachers. So one of the studies that they did was at the beginning of the year, the researcher says, "Oh, from your class, these particular people, half of them, so let's say like Kyle, Bolo, Jeremy, Jerry, Gary, Larry,
Straight
Bob,
man names.
Samilyn, Jesselyn, Marie, Bea, just giving like women names like
To prevent us
Ruth.
from being canceled. Just kidding.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this half, they're high potential learners. Okay? You should have high expectations of them. On the other hand, you have SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy, Mr. Krabs, Squidward. The other half, they're just SpongeBob characters. They're never gonna change, or if they change, they're gonna be late bloomers. So the research didn't know any of these kids. So randomly assigned siya. Basically, they were trying to give the teacher high expectations for one group and lower expectations for another group. And then at the end of the year, they saw that the students that the teachers had high expectations of performed well. And the ones that they didn't have a high expectation of performed poorly. So it's really about, do you expect yourself to be able to do well? Because if you're able to expect from yourself, then the Pygmalion effect can happen, right? So expectations really matter. Expectations of others on you, they don't really matter. But you expect from yourself matters. So in the context of the teachers, the reason why their personal expectations matter was when they expect a lot from a certain person, they tend to be more positive, they tend to be more caring, they tend to do more to help them out. Yeah, so to recap, 3 steps, right? Do the thing to build up confidence, aim for challenge zones to maximize your ability to learn, and lastly, expect that you can learn. Because if you don't expect that you can do it, you will never be able to. So that's it for me.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. So I think that we can make this a segment like actionable steps. Like at the end, we have this long drawn out conversation about what we feel, and then at the end we have like actual tips. So how about you? Like what tips can you give for people to become outspoken? The
Yeah.
title of this episode.
Yeah. The number one thing is that if an individual could practice talking about things that they don't want to reveal about themselves, like that is the crash course to being outspoken. What does that mean? For example, for me admitting to my teachers that I cheat for my math homework consistently, that really allowed me to be able to be outspoken about the education system.
Okay.
So if I'm able to admit that, hey teacher, like I've been copying my math homework from George since the first semester.
George is a placeholder there. That's not
No,
what,
George.
no, it's
Hi,
a
what's up, George?
George is the real name.
Yeah, if George listens to this, George knows that like I'm talking about George. Yeah, or maybe not. Maybe it's placeholder name. We'll never know. But the reason why that really allowed me to become more outspoken about the education system as a high school student is because if I didn't die telling my teacher that I was cheating and explaining why there's a culture of cheating is because people were not educated on what is the value of homework or what's the value of independent learning and making your own mistakes at your own time, then that really is the outcome for students who are not enamored in traditional education, such as me. So when I was able to really talk about, hey, like this is where I'm out of integrity, that's where it was just easier to provide comments and feedback to my teachers because the teachers would say, or the people that you criticize would say, why? Are you perfect? But it's already me saying, yeah, I am imperfect. And these are the things that I'm standing for in terms of how could the education system evolve. Another thing is, for example, compliance. Like one of the things that really is a pain point of this company at the very beginning, and we're working towards it, is like getting my SEC registered, right? Like we've been registered on paper in 2020. And back in 2017, 2018, when I'm just crafting all these things, like I didn't know that you have to register a corporation, but me being able to admit the things that I don't know allowed me to be able to build the company from the ground up because I was being able to admit the things that I wanted to hide, which is my ignorance or lack of background and skill with compliance and law and all those things. So if we're able to talk about our weaknesses or even talk about the things that we don't want to admit because it's more convenient and easier, if we cross that threshold, now it's easier to talk about certain things. Another example is like money. If you want to talk about money online, you have to pay your debts to your family members, your friends, schoolmates, and all that stuff. Because no people will be calling you out. But if you say to your classmate in college, yo, there was a weekend that I went to La Union and I borrowed 3,000 from you. You never asked for it, but I want to be in the space where I really want to talk about money, then I'll pay my debt to you. And once you are able to admit that you have debts to other people and you be in integrity in that particular area, then you can look everyone in the face eye to eye because there's really nothing to hide anymore. And that's one particular area where you give your space to be outspoken. But that's hard, right? No student probably who's listening to this would admit the times that they cheated on an exam and all that stuff. I would because I'm done with school.
So maybe you can admit, but only after you're done. But okay,
But
we
the
need
thing
to have
is,
disclaimers though. Like we don't.
While I was in school, I admitted to my teachers, like while I was in school. So I think that also comes from a position of privilege, right? Because my parents could just transfer me to another school. So I understand that
Yeah.
students with less privilege, that's the only school, that's the only scholarship. Maybe that's not the right choice.
Yeah, probably
But
don't
maybe,
cheat.
yeah, but maybe, for example, if you want to talk about money, maybe you want to be in integrity and reveal the things about your struggles about money, such that you can talk about it in a more transparent and non-BS way because you've uncovered all your BS and try to clean them up. So that's one. I guess like just number two in terms of being outspoken is that the willingness to being called out, the willingness for someone to rebut you is something that would allow you to be outspoken. Why is that? Because our perspectives and the things that we really feel strongly about, they're not 100% correct. In the same way that, for example, I have strong feelings about you really got to be for profit and like just focus on profit, right? But another person or you may say that like you need to focus on social good. Now, I may be wrong that the profit is the way to go, but for example, you also may be wrong that social advocacy and maximizing the good that we could do for free could also be wrong. But if we're able to express these types of things, even if we're wrong, we become the catalyst for discourse. So for me, it's okay to look like an asshole or a stupid guy, right? Like, for example, the TikToks, the characters that we play. But because of those particular statements that we make that we believe in, and somebody rebuts you, then that's just really an opportunity to readjust your perspective or learn something new or enriching your perspective. Because if we're not willing to be wrong and we're not willing for other people to quote our tweets and be snarky about it, so whatever, right? And try to rebut it, and like many people agree with it. If you're scared of being called out, then the fear there is that you're not going to be outspoken, you're not going to speak. So you got to be willing to be wrong, you got to be willing to reveal your weaknesses such that you have access to your full self-expression.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's it for this first episode. We thank everyone for listening or watching this camera. So, yeah, like in summary, do the thing, expect great things for yourself, admit when you're imperfect, and use it as a way to grow. You know, basically, those are the steps to be
Fall in love
ourselves.
with debate and give us your money.
No, fall in love in debate and do good things for the world.
And give us money.
But if you can't, let us know and then we can find like a solution. This constant between us. There's
We are a debate podcast after all, so there's a juxtaposition. No, but what do you call this? Yeah, we're just kidding. We're not trying to sell you anything except when we sell you something. But right now we're not selling you anything. This is for free, as you know.
this is for free.
Also, I would love to tell the audience to give us your feedback. What do you want us to discuss? And what do you want to learn about debate? Imagine us as your coaches, but every session evolves based on the feedback and based on the things that you tell us. Because what we really want to demonstrate is that we listen to the people, listen to the audience, the community that we serve, and reinvent ourselves such that we're able to fulfill on that vision and mission.
Yeah. So listen to us this time every week. We promise to be very consistent with our uploading. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, great.
Thanks.